Hey guys, it's Vince and Drew with Power 5 Fanatics coming back at you on Monday after week 3. And we're going to do our video with our new Power 5 Fanatics Top 25. And without further ado, we'll start with number 1. Everybody hold your breath. And it's Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's pretty much has the same top 6.
I know.
I mean,
well, I wouldn't say
depends
that.
on the order.
Definitely the same top 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, the order would be different.
Yeah.
2, of course, is our friends at Alabama.
Yep.
And
what's changed?
I know. They actually did have a little bit of a – they struggled a little bit against South Carolina. I'd say a little bit. I mean, it was a challenge.
It still blew them out, but
I think Tua played most of the game, too. And that's one reason he had, like, statistically one of his best games, I think.
Carolina played pretty good on defense. But it's really hard to put anybody above Alabama, just what they've done over the past – I know you're trying to go off of this year strictly, but – we've seen this team like just continue to just win, you know.
And 2 is really playing good right now.
Right.
3, this is probably where things change a lot. We still have LSU keeping the 3rd spot.
Right.
We moved them into the 3rd spot last week because of their impressive win at UT, University of Texas. They did nothing to deserve to be moved out of that, beating Northwestern State handedly.
Right. I mean, it was actually kind of close in the first half. I mean, I think at halftime it was like 14-17, but then in the second half they blew it open. I think they finished like 66-14 or something like that. So
it was another pretty good day from Burrow. I don't know how many touchdowns he had, but
I think he had like 5 or something.
Yeah.
So
then number 4, this has changed this week. We got the Buckeyes, and we think they deserve it because they beat up an Indiana team, which I thought was a pretty decent
on the
team
road too
this year, and they just really had their way with them. What was it, 40-0?
42, or no, it was 52-10.
Oh, 10,
like
yeah, they
that.
did score. It wasn't a skunk, but anyways, I really think they belong in the top 4 at this point.
Yeah.
Which
The
means
defense.
we moved Georgia down to 5.
Yeah.
Again, you can mix these top 6 up. I think most people are going to have these same 6 teams. Speaking of the 6th team, Oklahoma.
And back to Georgia before we move on. I mean, they have a great opportunity this week. They actually they host Notre Dame at home.
Oh, yeah. That's the game of the week.
I think they're like, I haven't looked at the line yet, but I would think that they're probably at least a couple score favored in that game. I mean,
you think it's going to be double digit?
It might be. I mean,
I haven't seen it either.
I haven't looked at it either, but
playing at home, though, that's going to be real tough.
So they're going to have a great
Dame.
opportunity to actually build up that resume a little bit.
Oh,
like
yeah.
LSU's already had that opportunity. Ohio State's played some good teams. Georgia hasn't had the opportunity to actually play any top quality opponents yet. So they definitely have a great opportunity this week.
Speaking of the 6th team, Oklahoma, of course, went on the road and did pretty much what we expected with UCLA. But Jalen Hurts continues to impress. He had, I think, about 260 passing and another 150 rushing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is what it is. The guy's really good. I mean, he's doing more than I think most people expected him to do.
I think our Heisman front runners right now would be Jalen Hurts and
mine's
Tua.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Still I think he's done more than anybody else.
The 2 Alabama quarterbacks. So
yeah. 7, we're going to keep them here at least for one more week.
Yeah, I mean,
the Wolverines, and speaking of big games, probably I guess the second biggest game of the week is going to be Michigan at
Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah.
So that to me, I like that game better than the Notre Dame Georgia game,
right?
Just because the Big Ten has been so impressive this year, and I'm waiting to see how it's going to pan out. I mean, right now it's Ohio State has kind of taken a step above everybody else, so I want to see what these other teams do. I mean, because Michigan and Wisconsin are both a couple other teams that we'd say, you know, are in the Big Ten running.
Yeah, this is going to help shape out a lot of the Big Ten.
To me, this is the game of the week.
When you're talking about, as of right now, the way we see it, this is second place that they're playing for this week.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And then, of course, later down the road, they're going to have the opportunity to dethrone Ohio State.
It's second place, you're right.
But they're going to have to – Michigan – and the thing about Michigan, too, a lot of people are really down on Michigan, which we came into the season really high on Michigan. And I think we're kind of sticking on with that a little bit longer.
Yeah, we may have them higher than – I don't know. There's probably – Michigan's probably –
I just think
they're definitely top 10.
They're really talented, and I think
eventually
if they lose this week, though, against Wisconsin, things are going to start to really take shape, and, especially in the top 25s around the nation.
8, we got Notre Dame, speaking of Notre Dame. And New Mexico played with them for a while. I don't know how long, a quarter or two. Seemed like it was pretty close. And then it was kind of just like the LSU Northwestern State game. The doors got blown off New Mexico the second half, and they just really ran it up pretty good on them.
Yeah, it seemed like the offense was what struggled in the first half because the defense made some early plays. I mean, they had a couple pick sixes in that first half. But then, like Vince said,
they're going to be interesting.
Really
this year.
blew the
Notre
top
Dame
off.
Is because they're always one of those teams you're not real sure about, and this is the same thing this year. I mean, it's like anything could happen. They could be in the playoffs, and they could end up the number 20 in the nation at the very end of it, or out of the top 25. I don't know. But so they're kind of one of those puzzling teams. They are a lot of times.
And one other note on Notre Dame too. They're going to have an opportunity as well to really build the resume. Like we previously stated, they played Georgia this week, but later in the season they play Michigan as well. Yeah. And that's going to, depending on what happens with these two teams, I mean, that could be for a playoff spot. I mean, just if everything else kind of goes in order of things for Michigan and for Notre Dame. So that's an important game if it gets to that point.
Texas, 9, I believe we kept them. I believe that's what we had them last week. And, they looked very impressive. Ellinger against Rice. I don't know how many touchdowns did he have.
Yeah, he threw for 23 of 27, 3 touchdowns, and he
went all Dak Prescott on Rice.
Yeah.
He was pretty efficient, I'll say that. And definitely still in the Heisman Trophy running, but he's going to have to do that against the big dogs, start with Oklahoma next month.
Right.
And then round out the top 10, we got our first group of 5 team, and I do believe they belong there because they have been great. Is Dylan Gabriel?
Yeah.
I think he's a freshman, but he had 3 touchdowns, very efficient like Ellinger. I mean, I don't know, maybe 80% completion rating. Stanford really didn't have a chance, and they just plug quarterbacks in.
UCF's getting it done. I mean, they're getting it done on both sides. They're legit.
It's all right in front of them right now, I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely legit.
Right outside of the top 10 is the Badgers. And again, we're going to know a whole lot more about them come here in about 5 days.
Yep.
Because that place is going to be rocking too. I mean, that's going to be a big crowd. I bet that ticket's hard to get. Then we got our first Pac-12 team, which would be no surprise for most people. Utah. Kind of, they don't just, they don't blow your eyeballs out when you look at them, but they just keep trucking along and winning. And they beat Idaho State. I know that's not that big of a deal, maybe, but. They beat them pretty good, and I think it may just be more of everybody else has fallen off the wayside a little bit in the Pac-12. I'm talking about Stanford and Washington losing to Cal last week.
Oregon already having a loss.
It may be more of that than Utah actually, being where they're at on our poll, but they've done what they had to do, and they've played who's been in front of them, and they've won every game. We moved Penn State down this week because I think they deserve to be moved down. They're just offensively, something's going on where they're not putting it together. And to barely beat Pitt. I know it's an in-state rival game, but Pitt hasn't looked very good this year, and they could have won that game real easily. Pitt, that's the one where the coach elected to
had a strange decision to kick the field goal.
yeah, and then they
it.
clanked it off the left upright. But you know, it is what it is. It's just Penn State doesn't look as good as they've looked the last couple of years.
Yeah, Penn State
Mainly offensively. Of
I
course,
kind of
they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. That's part of it. But
I kind of going into the season, that I thought they were going to maybe be like a 9-10
take a step back.
9-win team or so, because I felt like it was kind of a rebuilding year.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it is.
it's looking like that, or maybe even a little bit more than that.
But you know, we talk about the defenses for the Big Ten. You know, they don't really have it, you know, top to bottom on the defense, but their front seven is scary.
Oh yeah,
they got one of the best front sevens in the Big Ten, so that's why they're still in our top 15.
14, we dropped Florida just a tad. I think we had them on the other one, maybe 11. I can't remember, and part of that is just I don't think their team's going to be as good. With their starter out and their starting quarterback out for the year.
They covered the spread, though. Of course, that was a Kentucky team without Terry Wilson, but they also didn't have their starting quarterback.
Right.
I think Felipe Franks is out for the season. So it's, you know.
We dropped them a little bit, but we're still giving them respect. They are undefeated. And
right. They are finding ways to win.
And they're finding ways to win.
So.
Staying in the SEC, we got Auburn. You know, they look like they're going to be one of those teams that they're gonna have a win somewhere you're not gonna expect them to, like whether it's Alabama or LSU or somebody.
Maybe A&M on the road.
Yeah, but you know, in my opinion, with their freshman quarterback, I don't know if they're gonna be able to get it done as far as like winning the SEC. And they may prove me wrong, but I think they are definitely one of those that's going to shake up the SEC a little bit this year because they always seem to do that anyway.
One interesting stat about Auburn this week, of course, they who they play again? It was
they played Kent State.
That's who it was. You know, it wasn't the most competitive team to have to play, but they had 3 100-yard rushers in that game.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty impressive.
That's very impressive.
That doesn't happen a whole lot.
No.
And so they got the run game going. The passing game, you know, Bo Nix hasn't been incredibly impressive so far, but they've got some good receivers. And again, I mean, they might have the best defensive line in the league. If it's not, it might be Michigan State. But, I mean, they got an NFL defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So, very impressive.
16, we got our second Pac-12 team, Oregon. And
right.
they've kind of bounced back, you know, after their loss to Auburn week 1. Looking better. You know, the Pac-12 is just kind of like wide open right now.
Yeah.
You know, Utah's out in front, but anything can happen at this point, you know, because they're going to start playing the actual games, and that's what's going to matter because it's going to be hard for one of them to get into the playoffs. I mean, it could happen, but I think they may end up beating up each other just because it's a pretty competitive conference.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of those teams that weren't as good maybe last year or the year before looking better. And then you still have teams like USC. You don't know what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
They could, you know, they're going to pull an upset somewhere.
They play Utah this week.
Yeah. So, I mean, anything could happen there. 17, we got Iowa. Some people might even have them higher than that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I
you know,
guess
because they did beat Iowa State, but I think it's more Iowa State, you know, the
beating themselves at the end of that game.
Yeah, and the in-state rivalry. And my honest opinion, I don't think Iowa State's as good as maybe some other people do.
Yeah.
Especially offensively. But Iowa got it done barely, man. That was a close game. I don't know if y'all – that was the one that the game went on for about 6 hours.
Yeah, that was just a weird game in general. I mean,
two
the weather delays and,
yeah.
you know, the rivalry game.
It was kind of the game of the week for me.
They found a way to win it, though, so it was a fun game to watch if you're just a college football fan.
Oh, yeah.
So
then we got Washington. The Huskies bounced back in a big way against Hawaii. I mean, they just beat them up.
Yeah.
And Hawaii was one of those teams where
they covered.
And I thought Hawaii, you know, might be inching their way into the top 25. They definitely would have if they could have beat Washington, but They were just too much for them, and I think Washington had something to prove after losing to Cal last week.
Right.
19, A&M.
Moved them up, I believe, a spot.
Yeah, and, I know they just played Lamar, but they beat them by about 55 points. And so, offensively and defensively, they're still looking pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we may have kind of overreacted a little bit from them losing to Clemson.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard win to get.
I think they're going to be a lot like Auburn. I don't think they're going to win the SEC. I know.
This week.
I don't think they're going to win the SEC, but they could, get
definitely surprise some people.
Yeah, get that surprise win. And then we got Mike Leach moving in here with his quarterback factory.
Yep.
Who did they play? They
played Houston.
Yeah, it was Houston. That's right. That was a Friday night.
Yeah.
And
I thought both these teams played pretty good in
Yeah,
this
I
game.
know.
It was a pretty fun game to watch. But Washington State, I mean, they got a good defense.
Yeah.
I know Leach isn't known for, producing great defenses, but the past couple years, if you've been paying attention, his defenses have really been playing up to standard to actually
they're one of those teams like
be a
we were just
legit
talking about.
candidate for the Pac-12.
Where they're going to beat each other up, the Pac-12, I believe.
Yeah.
By the end of it, I don't know if you're going to have anybody. Everybody could have 2 losses by the end of that, real easy, and they're going to be one of the reasons for that.
Yeah.
Then we got a new player here in the top 25, TCU. You talk about a good rushing game. I think they had
346.
Yeah, 346. So, maybe the Big 12 now is a rushing league. I don't know, but and their defense too is looking great. I don't know. In my opinion, right now they're the 3rd best team in the Big 12.
Talking about dark horses, you gotta think that Gary Patterson, he's probably one of the arguably the best coach in the Big 12. I mean, he's been there for 18,
I would
19 years.
say he is, yeah.
And he just continues to put these solid defenses out there. I mean, I was more impressed by the defense, to be honest with you, than even the rushing game.
Yeah, because Purdue's really looked good at times this year, you know, and that was a surprise. I mean, I thought if anything, TCU wins by a touchdown or something. They end up winning by 3 touchdowns?
Well, I think Purdue got a touchdown late. I think it was like 36-13, but like I was saying,
it wasn't ever close.
With Gary Patterson, I mean, he just takes away what you're good at doing. And in that game, Purdue's got Rondell Moore, which is one of the best receivers in the whole country. And I think they limited him to like 4 catches and 25 yards. And then the Purdue running game at one point only had -6 yards rushing. And then I think at the end of the game, they ended up having like 23 rushing yards. TCU won that game on
TCU
defense.
had 346.
Yeah, and they had 346
What is that,
yards.
17 times more rushing yards? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was a great game for TCU.
We're going to stay in here in the Big 12 because the Big 12 is looking pretty good lately.
They had a huge week this
Yeah, they really did.
week. The Big 12.
Really, the only team that if Texas Tech losing to Arizona kind of hurt a little bit. If they would have won, you could say it was like a home run, but it was still a triple. We'll say that because they just beat everybody up. I mean, I'm just saying the wins they had. TCU winning, and Oklahoma State and Kansas State winning on the road at
Oklahoma with a big win against.
And speaking of Kansas State, we got them next at 23, and they deserve it too. And actually, their defense, I don't know whose is better. It's either TCU or Kansas State.
I think TCU right now does,
Yeah.
but
They're a close second. Kansas State, their new coach. Honestly, I think they're the surprise of the Big 12.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because new coach, they're undefeated. They haven't had the hiccup game, which some of these other new coaches have.
And the rushing game has surprised me because
they're the surprise for me in the Big 12 so far.
They're just so physical. But but going back to the
winning on the road, that was a big win for them.
Yeah, going back to the Big 12 in general. I mean, of course, the two they had a couple pretty big losses. Tech had a great opportunity there to go on the road and win, and then of course Iowa State had a fantastic opportunity to maybe get a win there. But I mean,
I think Baylor was off this week.
Baylor was off.
Yeah.
But mean, if these three teams right here were right on the outside of our top 25,
Yeah.
and them winning and in the fashion that they won, I mean, I know Oklahoma State only beat Tulsa, but they beat them. They covered. K-State.
Yeah, and they beat them pretty good. You know, it really wasn't close.
Yeah.
And they had their running back Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. Oklahoma State. I don't know what he had, but
246 rushing yards.
He may be leading the nation in rushing right now. It's either him or Wisconsin's running back Taylor. Yeah.
Taylor.
Anyways, it's like the rushing game and defense in the Big 12.
Quick shout out to Kansas too, pulling off the
no
huge
joke
upset, 48-24 on the road at Boston College. Who saw that?
That's what I'm saying. The Big 12 really looked good this week.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Okay, 24. Oh gosh, their quarterback, Arizona State.
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, Jaden.
Yeah,
Jaden Daniels. Yeah, he played pretty good. I mean, you know, it was a defensive struggle.
Yeah.
But hey, what can you say? They got it done. And Herm Edwards, he's you know, everybody was unsure, you know, what he was going to be able to do because he hadn't coached in college in so long, but he's brought some of these NFL quarterback or coaches. Mm-hmm. Like he's hired them. What's his name? Marvin Lewis, 10 years at Cincinnati. He's an assistant there, and they got another one. I can't remember his name, but a long-time NFL assistant. So, hey, the NFL guys are getting it done.
I mean, look, we were proven wrong by Arizona State this weekend. We picked Michigan State.
Oh, I know. I
to
thought Michigan State.
I thought they were just going to be out physical them, and especially with Jaden Daniels being a true freshman,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that defensive line with Will.
That was a big win for them.
I mean, they, like Vince was saying, with these NFL coaching, I think it's really increased the physicality of that team, where they're able to.
Yeah, I was mainly just saying, you know, the recruiting and they don't know all the ins and outs and their connections with high schools, but the coaching part, I had no doubt there. I mean, those guys know what they're doing, but anyways, they're doing it with young people, and they're getting the point across apparently.
Yeah.
And then 25, this was a tough one, but we decided to keep Virginia in here. They did beat Florida State. It was one of those where like, well, I guess there's no one else there, so we got to put Virginia. But the sad thing is they're probably the second best team in the ACC. Yeah. Either them, maybe Wake Forest. That's about it. I mean, other than that,
look great. I mean,
no, it's the ACC is pitiful right now, and I know everybody who follows college football is beginning to realize that. It's Clemson, and they're so far above everybody else talent-wise, and it's just going to be a scramble who gets second place in the ACC. And
it'll be interesting.
I don't know how many bowl games they're going to have, or bowl teams, but right now, man, that you talk about trending downwards. That conference is just cratered.
And Boston College getting blown out by Kansas.
I know.
At home. I mean, that was supposed to be a middle tier ACC team
against arguably the worst team in the Big 12.
You know, they got maybe.
Well, it's either them or it's West Virginia. So.
And they probably have the.
And West Virginia won too, of course.
Right.
They won. Yeah, they won pretty big.
I mean,
who do they beat?
West Virginia beat NC State.
Yeah, NC State. So,
I mean,
basically the Big 12 lower rung schools, okay? I'm telling you, going into this week, you ask anybody, West Virginia and Kansas are the bottom two, or 9 and 10, whichever order you want to put them in. And did they both go? Did West Virginia played at home?
Yeah, it was at home.
Okay. But regardless, they played what you would consider two middling ACC teams, not at the very bottom of the league, and just really got beat up.
Yeah, I mean, they really
both
did.
Both of them.
They really did beat them up.
ACC, I don't know. They got some work to do. I'm not saying they can't bounce back, and Florida State may
maybe Pitt.
Turn around and maybe even somebody like help me here. I can't think of anybody. It's pretty sad. I mean, I was just saying maybe somebody will bounce back. Maybe the Hurricane.
Well,
I just can't think of anybody that is going to bounce back.
A team that's kind of flying under the radar, I guess, is maybe Pitt. Almost beating Penn State if they were able to pull that off, which they didn't.
I would rank them right now. It's Clemson, obviously, Virginia, and then Wake Forest, and then after that maybe Pitt, and then
And by the way, Virginia Tech almost lost to Furman. Georgia Tech lost to
Yes, they lost.
Citadel. The Citadel. I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
it's
It was
crazy.
a terrible week. It was a
So,
great week for the
yeah.
Big 12 and a terrible week for the ACC. Well, guys, hey, man, we appreciate you joining us. This is our take on the top 25
Yep.
Power 5 Fanatics. Subscribe, like, share, hit the notification button. We're going to have more videos this week. In fact, we'll have 3 more. So we'll be talking to you later.
Thanks, guys.